Well, hi everyone, Shaun Humphries here. Welcome to All Things Retirement. Well, in this installment, we're going to address a really important question that gets asked to this day. Will Canada Pension Plan be there for you when you retire? Is Canada Pension Plan solvent with an aging baby boomer demographic as more and more boomers transition into retirement? Is there enough money in the pot? So in this video, we're going to address that question. Now, if you're new to our channel, make sure you hit the subscribe button. We're posting content all the time on various aspects of retirement income planning and overall wealth planning. And if you take a look at the show notes, there's some great resources, including a resource that will let you know how you can get a complimentary retirement income planning forecast. Okay, let's answer the question. Is Canada Pension Plan going to run out of money? So this concern that Canada Pension Plan is going to run out of money or is not fully solvent continues to be a question in many people's minds. And I think there's a lot of reasons why that's the case. So first of all, back in 1966, when Canada Pension Plan was started, it began as a pay-as-you-go program. So you think of the pyramid of demographics, you've got a much larger younger population paying into Canada Pension Plan, and when it was first established, a much smaller demographic taking out of the plan. And that continued for many years. But back in 1993, the chief actuary for Canada Pension Plan predicted that the Canada Pension Plan would be fully exhausted from a funding standpoint by 2015. So obviously that created a lot of concerns at that time. Now, parallel to that is the debate that goes on in the United States around Social Security benefits. And that plan continues to this day to be a pay-as-you-go program. So fortunately, back in 1993, actions began to be put in place to put Canada Pension Plan on a much more firm footing from an overall funding standpoint. But that's never happened in the United States. In fact, there's a really big looming issue in the United States as it relates to Social Security. The fact that it's still a pay-as-you-go plan in a situation where demographically you've got an aging population is not a very good thing. But fortunately in Canada, we began to turn the ship a little bit back in 1993. But in spite of that, there's still a little bit of a belief out there that maybe the plan's not fully funded. So let's take a look at some of the main things that were done back in 1993 to right the economic ship for Canada Pension Plan. So the first thing I'd say about the whole issue of Canada Pension Plan funding is it doesn't happen very often, but the Canada Pension Plan question became a bipartisan effort by governments on both sides of the aisle to begin solving this issue. So politicians got together and they worked collaboratively to try to fix this problem. So there was various steps that they initiated. So one of the first steps was a recognition that they had to ramp up the immigration rate. So Canada is definitely a destination point for immigrants all over the world. And part of our immigration policy is to focus on younger immigrants and younger immigrant families. Now that plays very nicely into helping to solve the Canada Pension Plan problem, because if you've got a lot of immigrants coming into the country, at the same time you've got an aging demographic of older Canadians, those young immigrants with families will help to make the Canada Pension Plan more solvent, because you've got a lot of younger people contributing to the plan. So our immigration focus as a country not only is critical to our economy, critical to jobs being filled, but it's also critical to the solvency of Canada Pension Plan. So that's been one of the factors that's helped to right the economic ship for CPP. The second issue, which is a more complicated one, and as a result it sort of flew under the radar, it didn't get a lot of press, was that number one, they changed the formula for Canada Pension Plan disability payouts, which I guess down the road or in the past were fairly generous. They put more restrictions on those payouts and even the earnings calculation for Canada Pension Plan benefits. And those two factors helped to shore up the plan financially, and it meant that benefits being paid out for disabilities would be reduced, which would keep more money in the plan. Which again, Canada Pension Plan was really intended to be a retirement income planning benefit program. It wasn't intended to be a disability plan, and yet it's taken on this greater focus to cover off benefits for all kinds of situations. So they began to right the ship a little bit from a policy standpoint. Obviously, people with disabilities should be looked after, but as a retirement income fund, they made adjustments to make sure there was more capital left in the plan to fund retirement benefits and less money there to fund disability benefits. Now, the third area that was initiated or strategy was to get the government out of the business of investing the Canada Pension Plan Fund. There was a time when Canada Pension Plan made lower interest loans to provincial governments, as an example, and so they were actually hurting the performance on the portfolio. So in 1997, the Canada Pension Plan Investment Board was formed, and that was a really, really pivotal moment in the history of Canada Pension Plan. So the minute that they set up that arm's length board to run the Canada Pension Plan pool of capital, performance began to improve right away. So the issue of being arm's length and then allowing that plan to invest money, they looked at investing in all kinds of investments, not just bonds and traditional common shares or preferred shares, but also investing in large infrastructure projects and private equity around the world. So it was a very important initiative and was part of that overall strategy to right the economic ship for Canada Pension Plan. Final step in shoring up Canada Pension Plan related to contribution rates. So back in the early 90s, when the alarm bells were being sounded about Canada Pension Plan, the yearly contribution rate was 3.6%. And the chief actuary and politicians of the day understood that contributions had to go up dramatically. And so what they initiated was a 2-decade plan that would gradually, called steady state increases, gradually increase contribution rates. Initially, the target was 9.9%, equally shared between employees and employers to shore up the plan. And that was reached back in 2003. And then if you fast forward to 2023, the contribution rates for 2023 will be 11.9%. And so when you take into account all these changes, the chief actuary for Canada Pension Plan, I believe, says that the fund is fully funded for the next 75 years. So there's not a lot of times that I would applaud politicians for a job well done. I sometimes struggle with the lack of foresight on policy, a lot of politicization of policy, a lot of sloganizing. But back in the early 90s, politicians really got this one right, and they made those very important changes. So a combination of immigration rates, changing some of the formulas within the plan, taking a look at the funding levels of the plan, and then turning over the management of the assets to an arm's length board to manage the assets of those plans. That was a really, really critical series of steps. And as Canadians, we should be thankful that those steps were taken. So again, I think one of the reasons why the question keeps coming up for people is that we live in a globalized world, and particularly living right next to the United States. We're hearing a lot of debate around Social Security payments, and that's a real debate with very big concerns in the United States because their Social Security plan is a pay-as-you-go. It's not fully funded. They've got some very important structural changes that they're going to have to initiate. Fortunately, we did that years ago. So Canada Pension Plan, is it going to run out of money? Doesn't look like it. We've got a very solvent plan, and the chief actuary is keeping an eye on the solvency of the plan and how it's doing in a very, very intentional way. So we should be thankful for that. Well, I hope that you found the video helpful. Again, if you're new to the channel, hit subscribe if you don't want to miss future content. Again, if you go to the show notes, there's some great links to other resources. If you want to find out how to get a second opinion about your retirement plan or a complimentary retirement income planning forecast, visit our website where you can find out how you can get that complimentary plan. Anyway, wishing you all the best in your retirement income planning and overall wealth planning. You take care. Bye-bye.